Okay, Bobby, we're back for another episode of the Behind the Headline series. It's so good to see you again and catch up.
This is such a fun series, and I love the topic we are talking about today.
Yeah, so spring has sprung, and I think summer travel is on the mind for so many people. And with that, we're kind of seeing a lot of prompts nowadays for maybe clicking to get travel insurance. So, wanted to talk about what's typically covered, how do you file? What can you tell us about people who maybe haven't explored travel insurance before and maybe why they should?
So we're all more aware probably than ever of this travel insurance because I know whenever I go to buy anything travel related, I get these instant prompts where if I were to click yes, I'm immediately told how smart I am to buy their travel insurance. And if I click no, there's a lot of scare tactics, and they really, even for me, they really get to me because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I making a huge mistake because I've put my travel plans at risk? What if something goes wrong? And I do feel that pressure. So it's very real. But I also know that especially for those of us that have credit cards, especially premium credit cards, this is a tricky thing. It's really important to make a decision, but it's important, obviously, to make a really informed decision and understand what you already may have in terms of travel protection from your credit card. So that's the first thing I'm going to recommend is do a deep dive. Don't assume you know what you know because the rules are constantly changing. Look at those credit cards that you have, especially the premium ones, and do a deep dive into what exactly is covered. So, for example, it might typically cover if you are sick or injured, but make sure that you document that. You can't just say, I have the sniffles, I don't feel like going on my trip, and they're going to give you your money, all of your money back. No, you have to get a doctor's note. You also can sometimes get refunded if you have weather issues, also airline issues, and of course, if a work conflict comes up, that's also something. But it's really important to understand what your credit card covers. And then if it has areas that aren't covered, look carefully at the other insurance from third parties that you are being offered. Don't assume that they're going to cover all of those different areas that your credit card travel insurance covers because they may not either. They also may have their restrictions. So, for example, they're not going to cover if you just change your mind. They're not going to necessarily cover, for example, if the weather turns bad right as you buy the insurance. You can't just buy the insurance, let's say 24 hours in advance when they're predicting a horrible weather event and expect to get reimbursement. It simply doesn't work that way. Although I do want to say many airlines are easing up. They may not give you a cash refund, but very often, if it is weather related and you then can't go on the trip because they scheduled you for the flight the next day or 2 days ahead and that kind of ruins your whole trip, they will often work with you and maybe they'll give you a travel credit. So make sure that you work with your airline to see what you can get. And I do want to give you one little final tip on this point. There is cancel for any reason insurance. So it may not give you 100%. It might give you 50%, maybe 75%, but there is such a thing as cancel for any reason. So if you want that ultimate freedom, look into that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you can really pay for peace of mind in a way. And you made a lot of great points about kind of the pros and cons, pluses and minuses of tacking on that extra amount of money to protect your peace or your trip. And so I'm curious, when is it worth it? Or would you say to people at home, is travel insurance worth it or not?
Well, to your point, I mean, it's all about peace of mind. So sometimes things may not make sense in a dollar and cents sense. Sorry for the pun there. But,
Yeah.
it may not actually make mathematical sense with spending the money, but if it brings you peace of mind and it creates a sense of financial wellness for you, that alone can sometimes be worth spending the money. In terms of your actual intentional decision making, things to think about are, are you making a non-refundable booking? Also, the further out in terms of time the flight is, so many things can happen if you're planning a trip well ahead of time. We talked about summer, but what if you're planning for next winter? What if you're planning for a year from now? That's some time when you may want to have travel insurance because there's so many variables that we can't predict. And of course, international travel is also a time when it can make sense to have that extra travel insurance because you don't know what will happen, especially when you're traveling. Sometimes there's a medical component to it where if somebody gets sick, that has resources to help with the person that's injured or has an illness with helping them get back to the United States or get to a place where they can get the help that they need. So you want to be very intentional when you're planning those expensive trips, those trips abroad, and trips that are far into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And you had mentioned earlier that when we go book our airfare nowadays, we're prompted to pick up an insurance policy. For people at home, should you buy your insurance policy through your credit card company and issuer versus buying a policy from a third party, whether that's an airline or someone else? What are your thoughts?
So this is such a great topic because people do get confused. The truth is many premium cards already include in your annual fee, and your annual fee can be pretty big. So you are paying for it in there, but you've already paid for it. So read that policy carefully. Make sure you understand it in almost every case. I'm going to say in every case, but just there might be some exception out there. You just never know. You've got to pay for your trip with the credit card that has the insurance. And that may sound obvious, but you know what? We might have a credit card saved in our airline profile and we accidentally pay with one credit card and it's the other credit card that actually is the premium credit card that has the coverage. So it's really important to be intentional and know that you are paying for the trip with the credit card that carries that insurance. That is so important. Understand the limits of what it covers. And again, you might want to get that additional insurance if there are pockets that aren't covered, especially things like medical. If something should happen, if there's an injury, that's something that may or may not be covered as much as you might need in the future. And understand that there may be some restrictions and make sure you're aware of those. And again, if those are things that are a concern to you, that's where you want to get that third party insurance and make sure your trip is covered. And that way you can totally enjoy your trip. Especially, there's some studies that say, Catherine, that the best part of the trip sometimes is the planning and the anticipation. So if you have the right insurance in place, you can enjoy the time going up to the trip as much as the trip itself. And I think that's kind of awesome, right? Financial wellness at its best.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. You really want to be able to just go and relax, No worries.
Totally.
Well, before we go, this is a new series that we're doing. So if there's a financial topic you want us to cover or a question you want Bobbi to answer for Behind the Headlines, let us know in the comments. And thank you so much, Bobbi.
Awesome. Thank you.